Pleasing patterns to help you think like a designer today on Beads, Baubles, and Jewels.
Beads, Baubles and Jewels has been brought to you in part by Beading Daily, your jewelry making resource for how-to projects, books, magazines, DVDs, events, and online learning. BeadingDaily.com. Beadalon, a manufacturer of flexible bead stringing wires, memory wire, artistic wire, stringing materials, innovative findings, and tools to help you fashion your own jewelry. Beadalon.com. Create your style with Swarovski elements. eksuccessbrands.com/create your style with Swarovski elements. Halcraft, jewelry component manufacturer. Halcraft.com. Jewel School, a division of Jewelry Television. jtv.com/jewel school. TiaraCast, define your design with metal. TiaraCast.com.
When in doubt, use a pattern. Whether repeating, symmetrical, or even asymmetrical, patterns give your jewelry structure and style. Hi, I'm Katie Hacker, and the next time you hit a stumbling block in the design process, try a pattern. It's easy to play and experiment with patterns when you use a bead board. If you take a look at these necklaces that I made, you can see some different examples of pattern. That one has a focal section in the middle that's all the same, and then it has a repeating pattern on each end. Then the graduated strand necklace is just an example of how you can choose 3 really great strands of beads and put them together in a really pleasing way. And then on this necklace, what I did was created a repeating pattern that's symmetrical. So it starts in the center and it extends to both ends. It's really easy, and when you use a bead board, you can plan out your design. So a bead board has graduated channels, and it also has numbers. So you can look at the overall length of the piece before you string it. So for example, this is one that I already wire wrapped together, but you can see it's 16 inches to each end, and then I have about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch for the clasp. And that's pretty normal length for a choker. If you wanted to make it a little bit longer, then it would be a princess. And you can see that I have even spacing. And when I laid these out before I wire wrap them, I could plan to add some pops of color here in the center. Now, when you're using a beading board, what you want to do is start out with your largest elements. So you can take your favorite beads and place the largest ones first. And if you're doing a symmetrical repeating pattern, I recommend going ahead and seeing how many it's going to take to get to the end of the length that you want. So let's say we want to make a choker length necklace. We'll have to adjust these if we want it to be even, or we could bring them all to the center, and that would create a different effect. And using the bead board lets you play and experiment a little bit so that you can see also how to fill this in. So one of my favorite techniques for this is to take your chunky beads, then fill in between with some 6mm. Now these are crystal. You could use any type of 6mm or 8 even. You can try with different sizes. When you're using the bead board, you can also see how it's going to look, and you can see how it's taking a little bit of shape. Now one way to really bring this punch it up is to add some bead caps. You could also use metal spacers in between here, and this will give you an idea too, there again, of how that's going to pop. Now to really get a sense for the spacing here, we'll have to string this, and I would recommend 19 strand or 49 strand for a necklace that's going to be a little bit weighty and you want medium flexibility. So what you'll do with stringing, of course, is just pass through your beads. And then for the bead cap, pass through the narrow end, and then your bead, and then through the other side of your bead cap. And I like to add these in. It's kind of like sprinkling the salt into your necklace at the end, because it really does punch it up. If you take a look at this fuchsia necklace one more time, you'll see the spacing and also how I used metallic spacers in there in the design and in the pattern. So it's really all about pattern. Next up is Erin Madsen with a stretchy woven bracelet. It's all about repetition and pattern too. Then, Molly Schaller is back with a Fiesta bracelet using double strand sliders for an asymmetrical design. Finally, Kate Richbourg shows how to make her signature stacked pearl ring. So let's meet Erin. I'm here with Erin Madsen from Blue Moon Beads, and today we're talking about pattern. And I love this bracelet that you made.
Thanks. Yeah. It's really easy. I'm a beginner beader, and if it was easy enough for me to put together, I think anybody could make it.
I love that idea. All right, so you could whip these up in an evening.
Oh yeah. We're gonna start by using some elastic cord, and I'm gonna cut 3 feet. It's kind of just a good estimate of how much you'll need for your bracelet.
Okay, so these will fit anybody.
Yeah, that's what's great about making your own jewelry. You can really customize it and make it fit a personality and fit a size, size of a wrist, so
sure,
it's great. So when you pick out your elastic cord, you'll want to make sure that it's strong enough, but it's thin enough to get your bead through 2 times. So we're going to be putting the bead in 2 different ways. So you want to make sure that it's strong, but it's still pretty thin. So.
Right. Okay. So they'll just test when they're choosing their beads, then they can test the cord and make sure it will pass through twice.
Exactly.
Got it.
So just to begin, we're gonna, I have 2 different kinds of beads here. One's just a little bigger, and we have some little accent beads that are a little smaller. So to begin, I'm just gonna string the bead.
Yeah, and it looks like you're working with 8mm, and that's a great size because it really brings out the difference in this pattern.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I like the neutral color in the beads that we chose, so it can go with any outfit. So I'm just gonna put 1 bead and center it on my elastic.
Okay.
And then for the smaller beads, I'm actually gonna put 2 on each side of the bead. So they're a little small, so it might...
Yeah, it can be a little bit tricky, especially with black beads. The holes are so hard to see.
I know, you need a good lighting when you're making these.
That's right.
When I'm beading, I sit on my bed and watch TV, so it's not the best. I get beads all over the bed everywhere, but hey,
I think a lot of people have that portable workshop going on.
Yeah, it's fun. Okay, so I'm just getting 2 on each side. Just 1 more.
Okay. These are great. And you could use faceted stones too if you wanted to punch up the sparkle.
Oh, that would be really, really fun. I know, we made some other examples using the same technique, so we'll be able to show you guys all the different looks that you can get.
Great.
So you can see I've just put 1 big bead and 2 smaller beads on each side. Now, this is just a ladder stitch. So you look really smart by saying that it's a ladder stitch technique, right?
That's right.
Sound really good.
Exactly. Very professional sounding.
Okay, so I'm stringing another bead, the larger bead.
Yeah, and you're using that 0.5mm stretchy cord.
I know, and it's really nice to get.
It goes through.
Yeah, it goes through really easily.
Yeah, now you could also use a needle with this.
Oh, that's a great idea.
You just have to make sure that the needle is thin enough to pass through your bead holes.
Okay.
So yeah.
So you'll see I have the big bead on one side, and I'm going to take the opposite end, so this side, and I'm going to string it through
the opposite
end of my bead.
Ooh, and then you're going to zip up your first stitch.
Yeah, it is kind of like a little zipper. I noticed that.
You know what? And this one is a great way for people to get started because this technique is something that seed beaders use all the time. It's the beginning of a lot of stitches. So the more you do things like this, you're sort of getting the idea of more intricate beadwork at a bigger level. So then you can take it down tinier and tinier.
Yeah, so it's a great beginner technique.
Definitely.
Right? Okay, so you can see that is all it took.
The first stitch.
That's the first stitch. So I just repeated it, and now we're ready to close it off. So do you want to do that, Katie?
Oh, sure. I have a great tip for that. So what you do when you're using this stretchy cord is pull it a little bit. So you put some tension on it, and that leaves more room inside the hole for the incoming cord. So as you are stretching it, then you can get your cord to go through a little bit easier.
Yeah.
There we go. And now, are you going to tie it up?
Yes, all I'm gonna do is just a square knot, and you'll see it's just I do a double knot, and then I use a little
bit of
jewelry glue.
cement.
Yeah, just to keep it closed. And your knot is gonna be hidden in the bracelet. You really can't see it, so.
Yeah, and especially when you're using beads with slightly larger holes, sometimes you can even nestle that inside the closest bead, which is great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I'll just do a little bit of glue and tie
And you're done.
off. Yeah, and
It's
look,
so easy.
Yeah, look how great it looks.
You could
on
just whip up a bunch of these for gifts.
Oh, yeah.
What a great way to get started.
And-
well, you want to take a look at these?
Yeah, I was gonna say all the great patterns and all the great colors. You can make so many different looks just with this one ladder stitch technique.
Oh, definitely. I love this one. It's almost reversible.
Yeah, and these were made to wear together, and you can see the awesome sparkle that they give off, and it's really pretty.
Definitely. And this one with the 3 beads in the center, you've got that repeating pattern again. You can always go to a pattern. Or this one with the stones in the middle, that looks really pretty too.
Yeah, I love the different looks. They just look completely different,
Oh,
but
for
they're
sure.
made the same way.
And this one is so colorful, and all your pattern is on the outside. So you would just need to plan that a little bit as far as which ones to pick up in order, right?
Right.
Oh, this is such a great beginner project. It's so great to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for coming, Erin.
Thanks.
We will be right back. I'm here with Molly Schaller, and today we're talking about patterns, and Molly has created this beautiful asymmetrical bracelet. Welcome, Molly.
Hi, thanks, Katie.
You're welcome. Let's take a look at this bracelet. I love the way that you put all of these elements together on one end.
Yes, that was it's kind of fun to have something that has a little bit of something here, and then just this for the back of your wrist without
you
the
won't
clasp
really
right
see
there.
it anyway, I guess, and gives you a little bit more flexibility.
It does, and it's more comfortable. I'm fidgety
Right.
about things like that. So.
Sure. So
Yeah.
how do we get started? Tell us a little bit about the sliders. These are gorgeous.
Thank you. These, they have enamel on them, and there are 2 holes, little channels in the back of each one, and they fit together really nicely in that I like kind of like this graduated growth and then dimension.
Right.
So, so basically what we do to get started is you take your beading wire. The 49 strand is what I usually use since bracelets get such a workout on your wrist, or at least they do on mine.
Definitely.
And I'm using 2 strands, 1 for each channel. And I've got my crimp on here, and I'm holding them as 1 at this point. I'm just gonna slide on the
Your
2
wires.
wires, yeah, and my toggle bar, and bend them back.
Everybody loves toggle bracelets.
They're easier to get on, I think, than the lobster clasp ones. And they look nice too.
Definitely.
Thank you. And then I'm just gonna use my crimper and crimp them. Sometimes they don't want to cooperate and come through at once all together.
Yeah, so
you
you
can
use
pull.
the standard size of crimping tool with your crimp tube. And I like to use crimp tubes when I attach a clasp because it has more surface contact, but you could also use a crimp bead there.
You could, yep. Yeah, I'm just used to the tubes. I think once you get used to one, you just
Right.
stick with it. I usually trim at this point because you've got double the wires coming through. So I'll go ahead and trim.
Yeah, so when you use your flush cutter, I also in class remind people to turn it to their work, turn the flush side to the work, which makes sense, but when you just grab your tools, you don't always have them the right way, so I always flip them around.
Yeah, it's helpful, and you just don't want wires flying around all the time.
Sure.
So to get going on it, since we're going to start down here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm still holding the wires together as 1. You can
Pass through.
pass through 1 bead. And you do want to pre-check your beads before you get really set on one design to make sure that both wires will pass through.
Oh, that's
them
a great
together.
tip.
So you're going to go like that. And then at this point, we're going to divide the wires.
And that's where your sliders come into action.
Yep, this is where we're going to use our sliders. But in order to kind of give the sliders a little more distinction, I like to put a little bead, an accent color bead, in between each one so that they each get the attention they deserve.
Sure. And the 4mm beads make great spacers in
They
all
do.
kinds of designs.
Yeah, I have these little purple ones too that are really nice. I'm going to use those on the back part later on. But once you've got those beads on there, they also give it a chance, like when the wires separate and open up, it covers that wire for you
Right.
so that you don't see the bare wire. And this is the part where you're just going to slide through carefully the sliders. And you really want to kind of cozy it up to those 2 little beads you just strung, because you do want them to lay pretty nicely. And you're going to continue on the same pattern, just putting one of these little 4mm on each side, one on that wire and another on that wire as you go through. And the channels, actually, they're holes that you go through instead of loops on the backs of those. They're all different types
So
of
they're a
connectors.
little bit different.
They are.
Right, and then you can see that
So,
the double strand effect there. I love the
Yeah.
way you use the spacer. So once you put all of your sliders on, you're ready to do the larger beads. And
Yep.
it looks like those are about 10 millimeter.
yeah, they're nice, and I kind of like the chunky look with the larger. These are pretty flashy beads.
Oh
on the
yeah, and
front.
it brings out the
So,
color.
Yeah, so I like how there's a variety of colors, but they're all kind of that same intensity in this one. And so I went ahead and I had strung this bead, but I went ahead and strung that all together to kind of keep those wires started together.
Keep your tension, too.
Yeah. And as you slide these on here, I do kind of try to cozy everything up. And then this is going to be the harder ones, the little tiny beads in between.
That adds some nice sparkle too.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
There. So you continue in that
Yeah.
fashion.
So when you say that you're tightening it, we should make sure to say that with bracelets, you don't want it to be too tight.
Yes, or
So-
else they'll be rigid and they won't wrap.
Cozy's a good word.
Cozy. Yes, to cozy them up.
Right. So let's take a look at this one again. So here's your beaded end, and you have some great fabulousness going on here.
Yep, I used these as inspiration for colors, and I tried to find other beads that kind of like went along that, but then again give it me some more flashy texture. And you could use, I like the length too. I like to have a variety of dangles, not all necessarily rounds. So this one's a drop. You could use the marquee like I did there. And you just make yourself a couple little wrapped loop dangles.
You need your round nose pliers.
Yes, I'll need those first. So what I do is I just go like that. I make a 90-degree bend and wrap around.
Over the top.
Yep. And then kind of readjust it, and then I wrap around. Actually, I like to
do your
use
wrapped loop.
these. Yeah, I like to tighten it with.
You know, everybody has a different technique for making wrapped loops.
Yeah, I bet you see so
I think
many.
we do, and it's great because then you know what to do. Then you just trim.
I'm just gonna try to keep it low.
Right.
Trim the end off, and then you can either use your crimping pliers, which is a really great idea, or you can use your flat nose here
Just flush it.
to get it down.
On these then, it looks like these are attached to a jump ring, and then that's on the toggle ring.
Yes.
That is great, gives it a lot of
Yeah.
flair. Let's look at this option. So this is using a different color palette, but same bracelet.
Yep.
I love it.
Both of
Goes
them
with my
are.
sweater today. Yes. And the blue one is an example of putting the sliders together without spacers between here. And you switched it up. You have the toggle at the other end.
Yep.
Just for fun?
Yeah, I think that the one thing that you do have to be sure of though is to not put the dangles on the toggle bar end, because that'll prevent the toggle bar from going through the ring.
That makes sense.
So yeah, you can switch it and flip it that way as long as you always keep the dangles on the ring end.
On the ring. Okay, and of course you could use any kind of toggle ring,
Yeah.
any decorative style. Well,
Definitely.
these are great and very beautiful. I love them,
Thank you.
Molly. Thank you. And we'll be right back with Kate Richbourg. I'm here with designer and author Kate Richbourg. Welcome, Kate.
Hi, Katie.
I love these rings that you made. They're so pretty, and it seems like a simple idea, but you could take it a lot of different ways.
It is. It kind of starts out easy and then it progresses to a little more advanced.
Oh, good. Well, how do we get started?
All right, so I have used some 14 gauge sterling silver wire, and I have created a coil on the center of my my large wrap and tap plier.
Okay, but you could use a dowel or a ring mandrel or anything to create your coil, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I size this actually when at the end when I'm hammering the piece.
Okay.
So you don't need to worry too much about getting an exact size at this point.
All right.
And then I go ahead and I free those rings up from the coil using my flush cutter here.
And always using the flat side of the blade to the work.
Exactly, because we want to make sure that our join in our rings are completely together, so there's no gaps in between, so they'll solder perfectly.
Okay, because solder doesn't fill a gap. Look, I
That's
learned.
right, that's right.
Right.
It doesn't flow to fill a gap. So what we have here is I've cut out all 5 of those rings because the stack ring is composed of 5 separate rings. And I've gone ahead and placed my solder on each of the joins, and I'm using hard paste solder for this. And I like to line everything up with the joins pointing away from me. That ensures that I heat everything really thoroughly as I go. I have one more to add here, the solder to add to this one. And so I'm using my red hot pick for my hard solder so I don't cross-contaminate. And since this is the first soldering step, Again, that's why I'm using that hard solder. And you can see I'm just placing that solder right on the join.
And then you are going to torch them all at the same time.
I am. We're going to start up at the top and go down. But before we turn on that torch, you know what happens?
Yes, safety first.
That's right.
Okay.
We want to use this torch in a well-ventilated area. We want to make sure that we have a fire extinguisher around, but our butane microtorch is very easy and safe to use.
Yeah, and fun too.
And I have, that's right, I have my rings on a kiln brick soldering surface, and I'm just going to go ahead and pop on my torch. Now I'm going to start over here at this top one, and I want to introduce my flame to my piece pretty slowly because I don't want my solder to hop off. If I heat it up too quickly, the solder's going to move. I can always coax it back into place using my titanium solder pick, but for now I'm just going in really slowly so it doesn't move. And can you see? There it went, shiny. So now I go right to the other one. And you want to move the torch slowly and deliberately so that the ring gets fully saturated with the heat. See that? There it went, it ran. Now I'm going to go over here. Here we're soldering under pretty bright light, but at home you may actually want to dim your lights a little bit so you can really see that solder run. See right there?
Oh,
there
yes.
it went. And once your solder flows, you don't want to linger. You know, get that torch, that heat away pretty quickly because you don't want to run the risk of the chance of actually melting your piece down. And here's our last one. Though you know what, these are really easy and simple rings. So if you melt one, it's not the end of the world. Just cut another one and give it another go. There we go.
Yeah, now these are sterling, but could you use any type of material?
You could. We could use copper or brass, other things like that. It would work just the same.
And that's great for beginners because they can't melt it, right?
Exactly, and it's much more cost effective.
Oh yes, there is that
Yes.
too.
So I'm just going to quench these guys. I'm going to pick them up one by one, and I love that little quenching
Me too.
noise. There we go. And once they're quenched in the water bath, they're cool and ready to touch. So I'm going to pull them out, and you can always tell if they're soldered.
Completely joined.
Yeah, see, you know that's, if they don't move, then they're ready to go.
Right.
And I would pickle these, clean them in with a regular chemical pickle or whatever method you prefer to clean your metal.
And then it looks like you're punching some metal pieces here.
I am. So to create the little domes on the ring or the little cups on the ring, I'm going to set 2 of these rings aside because we're just doing 2 of these plain, which we'll hammer out later. But we go for the domes. I cut them using a disc cutter and then dome them in the dapping block. Mm-hmm, exactly.
Okay. And this one it looks like you already have set up.
That's right. So I've soldered the dome on first. Using medium solder, since that's the second step. And the third step, we will solder this head pin in place using easy solder.
Okay, let's see you do that.
Okay.
Do you have a special, it looks like you have a special way of holding this on.
I do, actually. This is called a third hand, and you can see it really does act like a third hand on my piece.
And you made a divot in your kiln brick too.
I have, so that little divot helps to hold it steady, and the third hand helps to hold my ring. Now, this is a pretty thin little head pin. It's 24 gauge, and so the trick to this is getting the head pin soldered on without melting it. So we'll see what happens, because you know what? If you melt it, you can always try again. Exactly. So I'm going to grab my head pin, and this is going to be ready.
So you could put your solder on that, right?
I can put the solder on my head pin or into the cup of my ring, but I'm going to go for the cup today.
Okay.
Makes it a little easier, and you won't melt your head pin, because that's what we're going to be struggling against, Katie, is not...
Because it's so thin.
It is. It's such a fine gauge. It's 24 gauge wire. So again, about a size 10 or size 11 seed bead there.
Okay.
And before we turn on the torch,
Oh yes, safety.
let's do our safety glasses.
Okay.
Now, this is a little more of an advanced technique, so let's jump on in with it.
All right.
Click this on. Now, I'm going to hold this, the head pin standing by, as I heat the ring. And what's going to happen here is the solder in the cup is going to flow. And as the solder in the cup flows, see how I'm inching my head pin in just a little bit to warm up? As that solder flows, oh, there it goes.
And then you press the head pin in.
That's right, and just do that. And hold it still for a moment while the solder holds. And
Voila.
Look at that.
Cool.
It's ready.
And now you could put any bead on there, right? But
I
you have
could.
for this ring, you're going to show us to put a pearl.
Exactly. And this is hot, so we would just make sure to quench that and stuff. I'm just going to move it to the side here and drop this right into our quenching bowl.
Perfect.
Okay. So now what I've done here is I have put my ring on a mandrel, on a steel mandrel, to because I'm going to rivet that pearl into place. And I can
Okay.
remove my safety glasses.
Yes.
And I'm going to pick up my riveting hammer, and we're going to go ahead and rivet that little tiny stem of wire.
Oh, that's great. Let's take a look at the finished ones. These are so pretty, Kate. This is a great technique. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
And that's our show for today. We just added our 9th design element to help you think like a designer. Number 10 is outside the box. Tune in next time to learn more about this design idea.
Instructions for today's projects, plus other ideas, techniques, and information are available on the web at beadsbaublesandjewels.com. Today's show is number 1709. If you enjoyed today's show and want to see more projects and great guests, you can order a DVD set of the entire Beads, Baubles and Jewels Series 1700. All 13 episodes plus bonus content featuring soldering techniques with Kate Richbourg and spiral herringbone with Jean Campbell, only available in this DVD set. Order at beadsbaublesandjewels.com for $29.99 plus shipping and handling. Don't miss a single episode and get these bonus projects. Beads, Baubles and Jewels has been brought to you in part by Beading Daily, your jewelry making resource for how-to projects, books, magazines, DVDs, events, and online learning. BeadingDaily.com. Beadalon, a manufacturer of flexible bead stringing wires, memory wire, artistic wire, stringing materials, innovative findings, and tools to help you fashion your own jewelry. Beadalon.com. Create your style with Swarovski elements. eksuccessbrands.com/create your style with Swarovski elements. Halcraft, jewelry component manufacturer. Halcraft.com. Jewel School, a division of Jewelry Television. jtv.com/jewel school. TiaraCast, define your design with metal. TiaraCast.com.